This could be a massive moment for Cameron, and it's come and gone. Match starts has come and gone for Cameron. This would break his heart. And this would make Peter Washuri the most famous man in Kenya. The crowd rushing down. This is such a big moment here. It is.
We just crossed 2,000 people on our YouTube channel.
2,000 people witnessing this. There's a first start. There is a first start. This could be monumental. Cameron Carallison missed one dart at 32 to send him into to book his ticket to the World Championship qualifier.
Taking his time.
Finally, Washuri has 34. Washuri has 34 for a 154.
30.
For a 154 finish to send him in. What a way to go into the World Championship final. This would be amazing.
I'm lost for words right now, Devin. Can you hit that?
No, this is everybody. The world is looking at 34. Oh!
120.
What a moment!
What darts!
What a moment! And the man claps. And
what a humble person at the end of it. Great darts by Devin.
Wow!
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss, and alongside me as always he is the darts statistician, and for the first time we can officially call him the Darts Driver King. The stats don't lie. It is of course Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm glad to have official proof of my title for a change. So I'm over the moon. Even though we're recording this on the last day of sexy September, it's been the sexiest September of all. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing all right here, thank you. And yes, if you didn't see on social media, we have started a group on Strava called the Darts Driver King. We have got a few players, other people involved in it, including ourselves as well. So we can actually say who is the Darts Driver King. It is you for the moment, Burton. But yeah, I'm good. It's good to be back and looking outside. It's been chucking it down all day, so it's not quite a sexy end to sexy September, but what an October that we've got in store. We've got the World Grand Prix, the European Championship. They're both just around the corner. The World Masters makes its return as well. Lots of darts to enjoy, but before we do that, let's take a look back on some darts that has already happened. And we're going to start off the show looking back at this past weekend in Basel, the PDC's first ever stop in Switzerland on the Euro Tour. It was the Swiss Darts Trophy, and what a dramatic final it was. Martin Schindler coming back from 4-0, 7-4 down, surviving 7 match darts to win it in a last leg decider against Ryan Searle in the final. We're going to talk about both finalists. We'll start off with the winner, Martin Schindler. What did we learn about the German number one this past weekend?
Yeah, and as you said, we're going to talk about both finalists, so I will reserve the commentary on Ryan Searle for the next question. But I do think we learned quite a bit about Martin Schindler. We learned more about him when he finally crossed the line a few months ago to win his first Euro Tour title, because, he had been, I wouldn't even say knocking on the door prior to that, but he had been furtively glancing at the door for some time, and we knew that it was only a matter of time before he knocked on it and barged in. It just so happened that the first time he knocked, he answered the call and lifted the title. And that meant we did learn something at that time about how he was able to show the maturity that's needed to become a champion in the PDC. This time, you could say we learned it was not a fluke, but we already kind of knew it wasn't a fluke. Martin Schindler, even since then, has been going deep in Euro Tour. So far this year, he's made it to the quarterfinals in 7 of the 12 events, more than half, tied for the second most of anyone with Michael van Gerwen. But, Michael van Gerwen's only won one of these this year, so really Schindler's the better of those two, obviously. And that shows the consistency and how you have to be on your game to beat him. And you look at this past weekend. He was brilliant in the semifinals against Josh Rock. Never gave Rock a chance in that match, averaged 102, but all the others were about a 95, 96 average, exactly what you need to do to put yourself in position to win any match. And in the final, his average was down a little bit of that, but he was pretty consistent throughout it, and he hit some big checkouts at the right times to avoid losing that maybe 8-1 or 8-2, which very well could have been the way Ryan Searle was playing in the early stages of that match. I think what we learned about the Wall is that he is the complete structure. He is a very, very good player, and he's a player who brings his best game on the stage. Because if you look at what he'd been doing on the floor, I don't think he was doing poorly going into this. But in Sexy September, he played 11 matches. 9 of those 11 were below his seasonal average. Now, almost all of those were pretty close to his seasonal average. Yes, he was below his 93.11. That is his seasonal average, 40th best on the tour this year. But they were, 91s, 89s, below, but just barely. And he had and those two were both quite a bit above it. But still, it shows that he maybe had regressed just that little bit from the standard he'd been doing earlier in the year, which might have been closer to top 32. But on the big stage, he was a different beast. Every single match above his seasonal players' championship average. And we weren't really surprised about any of those performances. The next step for Martin Schindler is to do it on television. He made the World Grand Prix quarterfinals last year, but he's yet to have one of those real big defining runs in a televised major. He's yet to have the consistency that he's done on the European tour in a televised major. That's the next step for him, because right now he is the number 1 seed for the European Championship. And the last time a German player was one of the top seeds was Max Hopp the year he won his in 2018. He was the 7th seed, and he parlayed that into a semifinal where he lost the last leg decider to James Wade. For Martin Schindler, the goal has to be, at the very least, to match that, if not to go 1 or 2 steps further. Be that the final, be that win it. Because he's putting himself in that position. He's shown he can beat almost anyone on the big stage. Now let's do it on the big televised stage. Because with 2 Euro Tour titles under his belt and 7 final sessions on the Euro Tour under his belt, a PDC ranking major might just get him in the Premier League right now, and a couple of deep runs, including a final over those majors the rest of the year, might also do it, even if he doesn't lift a title. He's in that periphery of that conversation. What we need to learn now is whether he'll burst through that door as well.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. That is the next step for Martin Schindler. Can he translate this form on the Euro Tour, those results onto the TV stage? We'll find out over the next few months. But one thing that we haven't learned yet about Martin Schindler, but I'd love to learn it, is what are going to be his lottery numbers for this week. It'll be worth putting them on after watching that final last night when we were recording. He was a lucky man to come away with that title. It's not often you see a player miss 7 match starts in a final like Ryan Searle did. But no, in all seriousness, that win for Martin Schindler, would he have won that match in a similar circumstances, say 6 months ago before he won his first PDC title on the Euro Tour? Perhaps not. And that's probably one of the big takeaways for me from the weekend with Martin Schindler, is that he went into that final having won a Euro Tour before. Ryan Searle, he'd yet to win one. He was in his first final, but even though he trailed for almost the entirety of the game, Martin Schindler, he never threw in the towel. He always kept believing, and that belief, it paid off in the end. Now, it's not a tactic that I would personally advocate for players to try out, to let your opponent have 7 match starts and go 4-0 and 7-4 down in a race to 8. But going into the final, Martin Schindler, he was producing a lot of the darts that we've become accustomed to. He was averaging 97 for the weekend. Ryan Searle was averaging 89. But what transpired for most of that final was Ryan Searle producing his best game of the weekend, and Martin Schindler on the flip side producing his worst. We saw Ryan Searle kick off with back-to-back 15 darters, the 1-2-4 on the bull, a 12 darter in there as well. And Schindler, he was slow out of the blocks, but like I say, didn't let his head drop. And I think similar to the Peter Wright, Luke Littler Euro Tour final we saw, I think it was only last month now, but Peter Wright, he had that slow start. He was trailing quite a bit, pulled off a big checkout, and that seemed to spark him into life. And it was the same with Martin Schindler. He had that 1-4-2. It was only a holder throw to trail 5-2, but had he gone 6-1 down, I think Ryan Searle was on something like 58, 59. It would have been a triple breaker throw, and that probably would have been all she wrote. So, yeah, for Martin Schindler, he's rode his luck at times, but he has also produced the quality when he needed to. That 100 finish to make it 7-all, and then the last leg, after he starts with a 57, he goes 180, 140, a 92 set up to leave double 16 after 12 darts. And I've got to mention just lastly the doubles as well. This is courtesy of our friends at Darts Oracle. Martin Schindler, 33 out of 59 on the doubles across the weekend, which is the highest checkout percentage of a Euro Tour winner for 6 years since Michael van Gerwen, and he needed every bit of that in the final. He went 8 for 13 on the doubles. Going into the last leg, he was 7 out of 10, and that's something that has also stood out for me there, that even when Martin Schindler's not scoring at his best, he does have that ability to pull it out the fire with his doubles, the finishing, and that is certainly what got him out of the jail in that final and got him to his second Euro Tour title.
Well, you mentioned the 7 missed starts. Ryan Searle, of course, in his first Euro Tour final, 6-2 lead, 4-0, 5-1, 6-2 lead, 7-4, missed 3 match starts there, missed 4 throwing quit at 7-6 before going on to lose 8-7. How tough will this defeat be for him to recover from?
Well, if you ask Ryan Searle, or if you listen to his interview on stage just moments after that final, it's not going to take him very long at all, because you've got to take your hat off to him as well, because how well he dealt with the disappointment of that defeat externally anyway, because I'm sure inside he was absolutely raging with himself that he hadn't converted one of those 7 match darts and let such a commanding lead slip, and to miss out on what would have been the biggest title of his career to date. And if you missed his post-match interview on stage, Ryan Searle said afterwards, it's just one of those things. I bottled it a bit. That's the way darts go sometimes. For me, it's a case of on to the next one. I've been in this position before where I've thrown games away and I've come back stronger, so I'll be looking to respond in the same way again. And I'm sure you look at every player on the tour, at some point there would have been games where they would have been in Ryan Searle's position, where they've thrown games away. In his words, they've had match starts to win, whether that be on the floor, on the Euro Tour, or even on the TV stage. And I know you brought up a couple of previous examples of Euro Tour finals when we were talking about it off air last night, but where players have let them slip away after missing the match starts. And we've seen it happen in some high profile games on TV as well in the past. And when that happens, you do have to be mentally strong to come back from it. And, you know, I'm in awe of what these players can do on the dartboard. But one of the things that impresses me the most is when a player does lose a game like Ryan Searle did at the weekend, be it in a Euro Tour final or another big game, and they come back and the next time they're in that position, they flip the script and they cross that finish line. And Peter Wright is one of the prime examples. He missed all those match starts to win the Premier League. I think it was 6 match starts, and okay, he's not come close to winning that event since, but he kept coming back, and eventually he beat Michael van Gerwen in a world final and 7-3 fairly comfortably in the end. So for Ryan Searle, I think time is going to tell how he responds to this defeat. The good thing, and he touched on it, is that he is going to be in Wigan just 2 days later playing another event, so he doesn't have a lot of time to dwell on it. But I think the next time he's on stage, the World Grand Prix next week, and he's had a few more days to think about it, maybe that is when it is going to be that test of mental strength to put that disappointment behind him and make sure that when he does get in that position next time, it doesn't happen and he does cross that finish line.
Well, you took a very, very positive look from it. And I definitely can make an argument that he has the right mindset going out of it, but you also have to look at how he looked in the moment. And I've been racking my brain for someone who we can say unequivocally bottled it more than he did in a Euro Tour final. And, the 2 big examples that came to mind were Kim Huybrechts against Mensur Suljovic in the 2016 International Darts Open, and last year Dirk van Dijvenbode against Gerwyn Price in the European Darts Open. But both of those, I think you can say, were different scenarios. I think Dirk, he threw he at least threw one good dart at the double, and it didn't go in. And then after that, he fell apart. Well, I shouldn't even say it fell apart. He still kept himself in the match. He just couldn't get back to the finish line. And Kim Huybrechts, it was just one leg at the very end where he missed 6 darts at double, and then Sulovic pipped it. It was not a scenario like this where it was in the middle of the match. And I think that's what makes it different. He was 7-4 up, and he had he had at least 6 darts from 120. He ended up having 9 darts from 120, and it took him 6 darts just to get down to the double. And if you look at those last 4 legs, it took him till his 16th dart in leg 12 to get a dart at double. He finally left a double after 15. The next leg, he didn't get a chance. It took him till his 15th dart, so after 14 darts, to get a dart at double. In the next leg, ended up missing 4. And then the last leg, okay, he didn't get even a 5th visit, but had he gotten a 5th visit, even a 180 wouldn't have left him on a double. So it would have taken at least until his 17th dart to get down to the double. And for someone who was averaging north of 100 to hit only one of those 4 legs, even be in a position to get a dart at double in the first 5 visits, shows how his game fell off significantly from where he had been as he approached the finish line. And his body demeanor throughout that entire time also looked that bit different. He looked, after he missed those 3 darts after he messed up the 120 finish 121 finish. So it wasn't 9 from 120, it was 9 from 121. After he messed up that 121 finish, just looked like he lost count. I think he thought he was on 90 with his final dart and went for the bull when he was on 100. And he just, after that, always looked just a little bit confused, a little bit off, and a little unsure of himself. And then in the final leg, it looked like he was defeated. And that's not a good sign. That said, I said earlier that Martin Schindler was tied for second with Michael van Gerwen for the most final sessions on the Euro Tour this year with 7. I didn't say who had the most, because that's Ryan Searle. He's made it to the final session in 2/3 of the Euro Tours this year. That's more than anyone else. And that seems to indicate that he should have the confidence to know he'll get back in that position. This might have been his first Euro Tour final. And then you can say, who knows if he'll do it again. But it wasn't that long ago that he was playing not his first, but his 3rd Euro Tour quarterfinal his 4th, after having only made 3 over the previous 6 years. This year, it has been a regular occurrence for him, and it's been 6 of the last 7 where he's done it. And he made his 2nd semifinal of a Euro Tour just the previous event. That hopefully means he'll get back fairly quickly. And I started this answer by mentioning 2 other people, Kim Huybrechts and Dirk van Dijvenbode. And it's easy to think that they fell off after bottling their own Euro Tour titles, but that's not the case. Kim Huybrechts, a year later, was in the final of that very same event, going out to Peter Wright in a classic in Riesa. And Dirk van Dijvenbode, we might now think that, okay, he's getting back, but it was a long way back. But it wasn't that far after that before he was back in a Euro Tour final, making one again just a few months after that the same year. They both got back to a Euro Tour final shortly thereafter. Neither of them won it. The question now will be, can Ryan Searle duplicate them? And if he does, can he go one step better? He absolutely is good enough. No one was surprised to see him make the final. The only surprise was that it took him this long. And I think he just has to remember that no one has made it to more final sessions than him, which means no one should have more opportunities to finally cross the line if he keeps playing the way he has been playing.
More Euro Tour chat coming up in a moment, but let's bring in our first guest on this week's show. And what a moment it was for him a couple of weeks ago now on the Euro Tour, hitting that 9-dart finish. Let's bring him in. Here's our chat with Norway's Cor Dekker. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the 9-dart man, Norway's Cor Dekker. Thanks for the time, Cor. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And it's the first time we've had you on our podcast, so there's lots to chat about, but we've got to start with last weekend on the Euro Tour in Budapest. You hit your first ever 9-darter on the stage, a special moment in your career. Can you describe what the feeling was like when that double 18 goes in?
Yeah, you've seen it on TV, so it's a great feeling. First 9-darter ever. I missed a lot of 9-darters on the wire, but now it went in at the right moment, so I'm really satisfied with it.
Yeah, I was going to say your first one. How many times have you lost count? How many times you've missed that double, the 9th dart?
Yeah, I think around 6-7 times at least. On some streams as well. So yeah, it's good to see it went in at the Euro Tour in Hungary.
Definitely, yeah. What a time to get that first 9-darter on the stage, in front of the crowd, in front of the cameras as well. How many times have you watched that leg back on your phone since then?
Yeah, a lot of times. I've seen it on Facebook all the time coming by, so I'm checking another time and just guess around like between 10 to 20 times.
Don't blame you. Well, as I mentioned, it's the first time we've got you on the show, so let's go right back to the start for you in darts. Where did it all begin? How old were you when you first found out about darts?
Yeah, I found out when I was around 10. My idol was Raymond van Barneveld. When he won his first world title at the BDO, my mom gave me a dartboard for my birthday when I was 10. And then started to like the game, playing it a lot. I was playing football at the moment till I was 14. Then from 14 to 21 I was playing basketball, and then from 23, age of 23, then I was fully focused on darts till now. So I'm just keeping going with it.
And we spoke about it off air. You mentioned it. You were born in the Netherlands. You moved to Norway 12 years ago. Growing up in Holland, obviously, you mentioned Raymond van Barneveld was a big inspiration. We've seen how big darts has become over there in the Netherlands. Were there a lot of opportunities to go out and play darts back then?
Was some at least. There was pubs in around the area, so it was more like soft tip instead of steel. But later on, they steel became more popular in the area, so I just started to play a little steel. But the darts that I was coming playing was soft tip.
And around the age of 23, 24, you make that move from the Netherlands to Norway. What was the main reason for moving to another country?
Yes, because of my wife, because of love. I met her in Holland at the European Championship electronic darts. And then from there on, we chat on like MSN at that time. And then we flew to each other like every month, and then suddenly someone had to make the move, and it was me. So that's how I came to Norway.
Very nice. And in darts terms, Norway not as big a darts nation as the Netherlands, but what is the darts scene like where you are now?
Yeah, it's not quite a high level. It's probably if you compare it to Denmark and Sweden, Finland, it's probably at the bottom of those countries. But I hope it's getting better and better. But it's hard. It's how it is. It's the people who are playing darts. They have to practice more to become better, and I can't expect them to do that. So it's up to them.
Back to yourself then. In 2016, one of the first times we see you on the big stage was at the PDC World Cup of Darts representing Norway. What was that experience like, playing in a World Cup and in front of the TV cameras?
Yeah, it was a great experience, of course. I was playing together with Robert Wagner at that time, and I was really nervous first time on stage and everything. So yeah, it was a great experience, especially when it was we went through round one. And then we played Scotland in the second round, and then I had to play on stage against Gary Anderson. So it was even more great experience. So it was awesome, and first time, and I loved it.
Yeah, you mentioned playing Gary Anderson at the time. He was the reigning world champion. I was looking back at that game earlier, you come very close to winning it as well. You had a match start at tops to win 4-2, and the decider, Gary, takes out the 160. What do you remember about that day?
Yeah, of course I remember 160. I think I was standing on 52, so I was thinking, 160. It's not easy outshot. So I thought I was at least get like 2 darts on a double. But then I was looking at the crowd, and Gary was throwing, and I heard like the triple 20, and the crowd is hey, and I was in triple 20 again, way. And the last one, the crowd went crazy, and then I knew I lost the game, of course. So, but it was awesome to see.
And a lot of people have obviously noticed your height as well in that game. I think 6'7". You're one of the tallest players in the game. You mentioned earlier you played football and basketball as well before being fully committed to the darts. How far did you get in both of those?
Football not quite far, but then I suddenly my sister was playing basketball, and I liked playing basketball myself and watch basketball. Then I started to make the move from football to basketball, and I was quite good at it. I played like 2 leagues under the highest in the Netherlands. So then suddenly the coach said he didn't want me on the first team, the second team, and then started to take my own. Do my own thing, just playing with friends instead. And then I noticed the level wasn't that high with my friends, so then I was like getting I lost motivation, and then I thought like just quit, just playing darts instead. So that's how it went.
And with the darts, we've got to ask you about your nickname as well, the Sheriff. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it came from when I was around 16. I was playing in a local league with soft tip, and then when my friends started to hit everything on the soft tip dartboard, and then they started to call me like what a sheriff, like what a boss to hit everything, you know. So I was becoming the best player of the team and in the league as well. So that's why they gave me that name, and I just went on with it.
Very nice. Well, a few years after the World Cup, you're back on the stage, this time on the European tour. You're playing on the Nordic and Baltic tour around that time as well. But away from darts, what is it you do for work?
I'm just warehouse employee at an automatic warehouse for groceries, the biggest in Norway. And
this year we've seen you back playing on the Nordic and Baltic tour, I think for the first time in a few years. So why did you take a break from that tour, and what persuaded you to return this year?
Yeah, I actually lost a little bit of motivation. It started like from enjoying the game to I need to play, like it was strange. And then came Corona, of course. So then I thought it was a good time to take a break as well. And then everything went back to normal again, then I think I can't just quit with darts, especially when I'm one of the best in Norway. So I picked it up, and I qualified for Euro Tours. Made me get the motivation back again. So now I started practicing every day to see how far I can come.
Well, it's good to see you back, and we also saw this year you make your World Cup return, the first time being back in that event since your debut in 2016. How did you reflect on that weekend?
Yeah, it was a good weekend, nice weekend. Especially now you have like the group stages. So I was hoping at least to win one game, and we did, because I saw the group with Poland was the favorite. So, but I was expecting actually to play with another Norwegian guy, but he couldn't come because he had booked a holiday the same week. So that was unfortunate, but we managed to win one game, so I'm satisfied with it.
Back on the Euro Tour as well this year, and even before the 9 Dart, you made a little bit of history on the Friday. Your first win on the Euro Tour, the first player from Norway to win a match on the Euro Tour. How much did that mean to you as well?
Yeah, I didn't know I was the first Norwegian guy, because I thought maybe Robert Wagner had won of the Euro Tour, but probably not. But that win it was a strange win. It didn't felt really like a win because I was 2-0 up, and then suddenly the Hungarian guy led 4-2, and the crowd started to cheer at him, and they started to booing when it was on a double. I missed like 21 doubles, so it tells all. And but managed to turn it around, so it was a strange win, and it didn't really feel like a win. But yeah, of course, you're happy with a win, no matter what.
Yeah, you get the first win, and then the next day against Stephen Bunting, the 9-darter, a few moments earlier, we saw you miscount on a checkout at the start of the 9-dart leg. You are 5-2 down. What was going through your mind at that point?
It was really strange, like the miscount on 1 or 2. I didn't know what happened. Like. It was really strange, and then the next leg as well. I put it away on 30 instead of in my head it was 40, so which is like really weird. So maybe that's why I hit the 9-darter. I don't know, but it just the 9-darter went in, and it was a great feeling.
And you said on stage after you were happy despite losing the game because you had that 9-dart leg. What was the reaction like back home in Norway after the game?
Yeah, everyone was happy for me that I hit a 9-darter on stage, and my mom as well. When I rang her, she was like crying on the phone. Is proud of me, like threw a 9-darter on stage in front of a big crowd, and my wife as well was like everyone was happy for me, and they were all happy.
And one of your main sponsors I want to ask you about as well, Super Darts, based in Norway. They manufacture your own darts. How much of a help have they been for you in your career?
Per is helping me a lot. He's giving me jerseys to wear and my equipment, and he supports me all the time, of course. And he's my equipment sponsor, so it helps a little bit. So it's nice.
And a couple more before we let you go. Looking ahead, what have you got in the calendar darts-wise for the rest of 2024? Any tournaments we can expect to see you in before we go to next year?
2020, the rest of 2024 is it's a little bit quiet. I don't really have any tournaments, but I'm just preparing myself for the Q school next year. That's what I want to try, and we'll see how it goes. And if I get a tour card, of course, further with it. If I don't get a tour card, then I'm planning to play the Challenge Tour alongside the PDC Nordic Baltic. That's my plan.
Excellent. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. What are the plans for next year? I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that will have seen you play last weekend, saw the 9-darter, and be asking, is Cor Dekker going to be going to Q School? But you answered it there. That's the plan for next year.
Yeah, it is. So I'm looking forward to it, and we'll see how it goes. So I will do my best, and hopefully it goes well.
Good man. Well, Cor, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Congratulations on the 9-darter last week, and we wish you all the best for that visit to Q School next year.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Cor for joining us and continuing our look back at the Euro Tour over the last couple of weekends. And we've got to go back to 2 weekends ago now, the Hungarian Darts Trophy, for one of our questions of the week from last week, sponsored by Condor Darts. What 9-darter from the Hungarian Darts Trophy was your favourite?
I think you have to say Cor Dekker. It's just because it is something different when one of the, there's not that many regional qualifiers anymore, and they keep getting fewer and fewer. But one of the players we don't normally see on the tour is able to find perfection in front of a huge crowd, and it's just something wonderful about it because it shows the depth of the game. And not anyone can throw a 9-darter, but at the same time, anyone can throw a 9-darter. We've seen a couple videos now of pub players doing it. It's rare, and they're going to do it a lot less often than the likes of Michael Van Gerwen or Luke Littler. And even in practice, it'll be very unlikely. But anyone theoretically can. I've even gotten 5 darts into a 9 before. I don't know how, but I have. Like, anyone could do it. And to see someone do it who, up until that point, you weren't even sure whether they would know how to count to get down to a double on a different leg, to be able to bring that out was remarkable. But, also a shout out, 2 of those 3 happened against Stephen Bunting. Just a little tidbit there. And then obviously Martin Schindler to come back and win the following week. Not too shabby, a 9-darter one week, a title the next. But I got to go Cor Dekker.
Yeah, I think that's a popular answer. Just looking at our poll on Twitter, and a rare occurrence where we actually do have the results. We did this poll last week, but our listeners, 71% going with you, Burton, going with Cor Dekker, and 19% going with Michael van Gerwen, 10% going with Martin Schindler. And as always, thanks to everyone that's got involved and voted on the poll. And I don't want to say it's a bias because he is a guest on the show this week, but I think I've got to go with you and the majority of our listeners here and say Cor Dekker for this. It was unexpected, wasn't it? The way the match was going, Stephen Bunting was 5-2 up, 1 leg away from victory. Cor Dekker, he just won his first ever match on the Euro Tour the day before. It looked like his tournament was about to come to an end, and he had miscounted, what was it, a leg or 2 legs before, and we even tweeted miscount of the year. It could be a contender for our weekly Dartscast awards, but to then come back from that a few minutes later and throw the 9-darter. His first one ever, by the way, as you just heard from him, he'd missed the last dart at the double several times in the past. So to finally get that first 9-darter in competition, and what a place and a time to do it on the European Tour stage in front of a captive darts crowd in Budapest, that was a special moment for him. And it appeared to open the floodgates, didn't it? We saw a record-breaking weekend, the first time that we've had 3 9-darters in the same European Tour event. Michael van Gerwen throwing another one to his collection, the first leg of his match with Martin Lukeman later that day. And MVG, I've lost count of how many 9s he's had, but don't know if he's had one in the first leg of a match before. I know Luke Littler's one in Bahrain at the start of this year. That was in the opening leg, and that is some feat as well to do it. As soon as the referee says game on, 9 perfect darts. It's downhill from there though, isn't it? But the last one, Martin Schindler, as we've been talking about on the show, what a couple of weeks he's had on the Euro Tour, a 9-darter, his first on a stage in the PDC, and then a week later he wins his second Euro Tour. And with Martin, we know his celebrations as well. I don't think there's many players who are as animated as him when he pulls something like this off, and he even puts Going Price and MVG to shame sometimes. But for me, and like you, Burton, I've got to go with Cor Dekker. That was my favourite 9-darter from that weekend.
Good to see us agreeing for a change. It used to be we agreed all the time. Now we almost never agree. Although we do agree on one thing, and that's that I am the Darts Strava King. But we have another question of the week sponsored by Condor Darts, since we didn't have an episode last week. And that will be, who will be the number 1 seed for the European Championships? Right now, it's a 4-way race with 1 event to go. But I'll let you give us more information on that race.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting subplot to that last Euro Tour coming up in a few weeks' time, the Czech Darts Open in Prague. And looking at our poll at the moment, you do have time to go and vote on this one. So get on our Twitter and have your say. Dave Chisnell just edging Martin Schindler. I think it's 36.1% to 35.3%. That's how close it is. Luke Littler, 18%. Michael van Gerwen, 10%. And yeah, just to run you through the numbers after what was the penultimate Euro Tour of the year this past weekend, Martin Schindler's second title, putting him on £101,500. Dave Chisnell, he's also won 2 Euro Tours this year. He's on £88,500. He was the number 1 before Schindler won yesterday when we were recording. And then you've also got the 2 other runners in this race to get to number 1. Luke Littler, £82,500, and then Michael van Gerwen still in the race. He's on £81,000, a Euro Tour win worth £30,000 these days. And everyone else, they're out of the running in terms of finishing in that number 1 seed. And 2 of those 4 players, they have been the number 1 seed before. Michael van Gerwen from 2014 to 2019. Dave Chisnell, he was the number 1 seed last year for the European Championships. So if Schindler or Littler can take that top spot, it means we'll have had 6 different number 1 seeds for this event for the last 6 years. And I'm sure that's probably not a unique thing for this event compared to all the other majors. There's probably other majors that have been similar over the last half a dozen years. That is the period of darts we're in. There's not been a constant number 1 in terms of the overall rankings and then also these other rankings that we follow during the year. But it's a tough one, and it's difficult to say because we don't have the actual draw for this last Euro Tour coming up. But one thing we do have is how the seedings are going to be for this event. And Luke Littler, he is in the opposite half of the draw to the other three players in this race to be the number one seed. And you might think, that's something that's going to go in his favour. But then you see the potential seeds he could play in the third round and in the quarterfinals. The third round, if he turns up, it could be Gary Anderson. In the quarterfinals, possibly Luke Humphreys or Rob Cross. So it's not quite as straightforward, is it? And in the other half of the draw, you have got Dave Chisnell, the top seed, Michael van Gerwen, the 16th seed. So there's a potential third round meeting between those two. Martin Schindler, his potential third round seed is Gerwin Price if those two make it through. So you've got potentially 3 blockbuster matchups there on that Sunday afternoon in Prague if all the players do enter this last event. And the way the seedings work for this last Euro Tour, it could come down to the last game. I think the only scenario where it wouldn't is if Schindler played Littler in the final. I think Schindler would have just done enough by then not to get caught anymore. But who am I going to go for? I'm going to lean towards Martin Schindler here. I think he deserves it as well. And you mentioned earlier about Max Hopp a few years ago, his great run that he had on the Euro Tour. He was the 7th seed. I think for Martin Schindler to be the number one seed for this European Championship, go to Dortmund with those 2 titles. It could be another one. He could be on 3 by the time we get there. But I think that would be just reward. But it's not a done deal. We know that there's 3 others in the race, and we could quite easily go and see Dave Chisnell win another Euro Tour. We could see Luke Littler come through the field again, or we could see Michael van Gerwen. He's only just won one recently. So, yeah, I think it's not a done deal at the moment, but I'm going to side with Martin Schindler. I think he is just going to do enough to take that top spot and go to Dortmund as the number one.
Well, I mean, that is the safe bet, and it is the most likely bet. You mentioned that, right now we see what the potential draw bracket is, but if one of the seeded players withdraws, that could change everything. And Luke Littler and Michael van Gerwen are no guarantee to go to the event. We would think there's a good chance that Michael van Gerwen does. He tends not to skip Euro Tours. We think there's a good chance that Luke Littler will as well, but they might skip, especially with so many big events coming up and so few weekends off, at least if you don't go out early in the World Grand Prix and you don't go out early in the Grand Slam. You have a lot of darts and a lot in the diary over the next few months. So it is a possibility that they will withdraw. I would expect both Dave Chisnell and Martin Schindler to play, but there is that possibility that Luke Littler and Michael van Gerwen go out or skip the event. But Littler and van Gerwen have to win it. And it has to be over someone other than Martin Schindler in the final. Van Gerwen right now would not play Schindler in the final. But again, if people withdraw, that could change. The bracket could mix up, and suddenly you could be in a scenario where that is the potential final. Dave Chisnell, even if somehow the bracket changes, Dave Chisnell beating Martin Schindler in the final would still be enough for Chizzy. So it's really a question of, do I think one of Dave Chisnell, Luke Littler, or Michael van Gerwen will win the last Euro Tour? And maybe from what we've seen this year, it's a 40% chance. Littler has a very good chance to win. Van Gerwen, if he's still like he's been in the last few weeks, is a very good chance. And Dave Chisnell is always a very good chance on the European Tour, if not on television. So, I think all of them have a good chance. But it's still less than 50%, even giving yourself any one of those 3. And if it's less than 50% chance, then the answer has to be Martin Schindler as the most likely result. And I'm not going to go against the numbers here. I think it's more likely than not that Martin Schindler would be the top seed. And as you said, having won 2 events, having made 7 quarterfinals, 4 semifinals, and 2 finals, winning both those finals, he has been the form player on the European Tour this year. At the very least, he's been the most consistent, and he's been the player that you will see the most often at the money end of the event. And therefore, I'm going to go Martin Schindler to be the top seed. It can be done. He can be caught. And it's not that unlikely that one of those three will do it. But it's more unlikely than it is likely. And therefore, it's more likely than it is unlikely that Martin Schindler is the top seed for the European Championships.
And now move on to our final guest on the show. He is going to be presenting some darts this weekend. He's a long-time presenter of the darts at the Lakeside. He now presents the darts for the World Seniors. And we have got the World Seniors match play coming up this weekend in York. So here's our chat with Ray Stubbs. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the presenter of the World Seniors Darts, Ray Stubbs. Thanks for the time, Ray. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for asking me.
It's great to have you on, and we're talking a little over a week before the World Seniors returns to our screens with the match play. For those of our listeners who only follow the darts, what have you been up to since the last Seniors event, the Champion of Champions, back in March?
It's been a busy summer for all manner of sports, and I guess there's just so much. There's darts all over the place now, isn't it? So I try to keep in touch as much as I can. But it's been a busier summer of sport.
The last Seniors event on TV, the Champion of Champions, we saw Richie Howson win his first Seniors major after a few runners-up finishes. He's gone from being a qualifier to being the Seniors number one. What have you made of his progress over the last 2 years?
I think what Richie has managed to achieve is absolutely part and parcel of what I felt is such a positive thing about the Seniors Darts, because there are great players from history playing on the tour, no less than Phil. And Phil Taylor coming out of retirement and playing on the Seniors Tour was absolutely crucial to being able to promote what the two Jasons, Jason Tame and Jason Francis, wanted to do. But then I've really enjoyed watching the likes of Richie and many others who, for whatever reason, maybe weren't able to achieve exactly what they wanted to achieve in darts when they were playing on the Seniors Tour. And then all of a sudden, this tour comes along, which gives everyone the opportunity to have another crack at it and win major titles, play on the television, on big stages, in front of crowds that are so appreciative of darts. So I think what Richie has done, I think Richie represents maybe a host of darts players that just wanted to give it one more crack, because the competitive spirit absolutely remains, and the fire in these guys. So well done, Richie. And by the way, he's one of the most likeable blokes you could ever meet. So I think that's been a great success story for Seniors Darts. And I remember Jim McEwen got to the final last year of a major. And earlier on, Jim had seen the Seniors Darts as it kicked off and said, I want to be part of it. Got back on the practice board, got out there, put the work in, and I think all the guys and the women that play in the seniors, they put the work in, don't they? And if you put the work in, you've got a chance of reaching the reward. So Richie, Jim, and a host of other players. Alex, we could go on and on with the names that are playing on the tour alongside great names from darts down the years. So I have to say, I think it's a terrific concept that guys and women that have hit 50 have hit bullseye in years that can still play competitive darts, and well, they give me the impression they're really enjoying it, and we are really enjoying producing some television coverage for people to watch.
Yeah, it's been good to see. Well, let's get on to you then, and you've had a long career in sports broadcasting, but take us back to where it all began, because before joining the BBC, you were playing football for Tranmere Rovers and then working for the club behind the scenes. Is that right?
Absolutely. I was the worst left back in the history of Tranmere Rovers Football Club. I was a pro for 5 years, and then I got offered a job working for the club in an administrative role, and I observed the broadcasters arriving at the club. And I remember as if it's yesterday thinking, they're getting paid to talk about football. That's a good job. I'm going to have a crack at this. So I set about learning the basics. And I got very lucky, thanks to a multitude of people who helped me and gave me opportunities. BBC Local Radio on Merseyside was instrumental in that. So when I was suddenly following Everton and Liverpool around England and Europe, what an opportunity that was. Then I got a chance to join the BBC Sport TV team, and I managed to get away with it for a lot longer than I imagined.
Well, sticking with the football side of your work, you mentioned about following Everton and Liverpool. You covered a lot of the major tournaments as well, World Cups, European Championships. What were those experiences like, travelling the world and covering some of the biggest games?
I always go back to World Cup 1994 because I think the title in those days was Reporter in Residence, and I was given the job of following the Irish team around the United States for World Cup 94. Can you imagine what that was like? Oh my word. That was absolutely terrific. And I always tell the story of whereas today World Cup teams and squads have to be locked away and really get protection and be out the way of people. In 1994, the Irish team was staying in the same hotel as a lot of the Irish fans, but also the United States Star Trek convention for that particular year. So the spectacle of players arriving for breakfast and the doors would open and it would be Roy Keane, Jack Charlton, whatever, but also a few Captain Kirks, Lieutenant Ahuras, and a few Spocks with all in full kit. It is an image that will stick with me for a long, long time. That was absolutely terrific. I first worked on the darts, Alex, actually, late 80s, just sitting in a van next to the lake at the Lakeside. I was worked in the production team, and my first few years in television was as producer. So going to the Lakeside in that production capacity very early in my career sticks with me. But then being invited back those years later to present the coverage was that was an ambition realised.
Good times. And you mentioned there about that first visit to Lakeside in the 1980s, working behind the scenes. What was that transition like then, going in front of the camera as someone who was learning on the job when you made that switch from Tranmere to the BBC? Were there any nerves, and if so, how did you overcome those? I'm not really sure I can answer that because I was very nervous then, and I get very nervous to this day because you want to do the job as well as you can. I like to be as prepared as well as I can, and I want to do a good job. And unless I think you're slightly apprehensive, perhaps that won't happen. I have a ritual with Robert George, whereby before we start every programme, like sort of 30 seconds or so before it starts, we sort of just give each other a little bit of a stare in the eye and shake hands, and then we get on with it. And I think my career in darts as well, to a degree, I have so much to thank Bob for, because it would have been, I would say, early 90s that I got sent round to his house to make a film about his career in darts. It is on YouTube, actually. I was looking at it recently. I think it's 30 years ago, and I just made a film about Bob and the fact that he was playing tournaments, he was playing exhibitions, he was travelling around the country. I travelled to Germany with him to go and entertain the troops at a base somewhere in Germany, and that kicked off a friendship that's lasted 30 years. He is a great player, he's a great pundit, he's a great friend, and he is a great ambassador for darts. Yeah, I was going to come on to that relationship you've got with Bobby George. That documentary you mentioned, for our listeners, what's that called so they can go and search for it? Alex, I'm afraid I've no idea, but I think if you have a little look at, I think you just have a look at sort of Bobby George Sports Night. I think it was 1994. I'll try and find out more. Bob will know. Phone him up. He'll know exactly where it is. Oh, wow. We were in pubs in the East End of London. We were in Germany. We were reminiscing about his career in the tournaments, and obviously your
the people that support darts and the people that listen to the podcast will know exactly all about Bob. But I just think sometimes it's worth mentioning that Bob's contribution down the years in many, many ways should never be overlooked. Robert, as I call him, I think has given darts a great, great service.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And when we're off air, we'll dig out that documentary. We'll put a link in the description for our listeners who want to listen to it. And just finishing up with you and Bobby there, one of my favourite things about watching the seniors is seeing you two back together. But back to your career, and you made the move from the BBC to ESPN, and we did see you cover the other side of darts very briefly, the PDC. I think it was the European Championship in 2012. I think Simon Whitlock won it, if memory serves me correctly. What do you remember about covering that side of the darts?
I think because of my years working at the Lakeside and then witnessing the way that darts changed so dramatically, and obviously from inverted commas the split onwards, and then watching just where it's grown and grown and grown and grown. Well, I think when you travelling to Germany and seeing those crowds, and then obviously you see the crowds in Holland, and now it's grown, and the guys are going all around the world playing absolutely everywhere. I just think sometimes you think, whoa, it's made such an incredible journey, and an incredible journey to where it is today. Alexandra Palace, Vegas, it's a global sport, and the Lakeside played its part in that journey along the way, of course.
Looking back at the Lakeside, obviously you worked there for many years behind the scenes, in front of the cameras. Are there any moments, any matches that stand out the most for you?
I remember Raymond van Barneveld winning the title there. Adams Nixon, oh my word.
God.
I mean, I just think the drama of that, it's like, sometimes isn't it great? You can't write stuff like that, can you? Because that was just incredible drama. And then, of course, I am biased because I think he's a friend. Andy Fordham's success and just the love for Andy that was in the room, and then subsequently the fact, sad to say, that we've lost Andy Fordham's success sticks in my mind. And in those days, the Lakeside used to do really good business. It was a great way to start a year. Moving further forward, I remember Scott Mitchell's success and watching Scott achieve his lifetime's ambition. Everyone that won, being sort of close up and seeing what it means to them, I think it's a great privilege. And I always thought that winning on the Lakeside stage, and I mention the Lakeside stage because that's what I sort of worked on most down the years. So I think when I say Lakeside, I just think I'm adding everything into it, because all the other big tournaments, wherever they're played, it's the same thing. Winning on those big stages is massive. But I also think that just qualifying to play in those tournaments for a lot of darts players absolutely is a great success in itself. Just walking out at Alexandra Palace, just walking out in Blackpool, it's a big moment in the darts careers of so many darts players, and it's been nice to see and it's been nice to witness.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And we'll finish up with a few listener questions in a moment, but during my research I read that Noel Gallagher called you a legend. So has he sorted you out some tickets for the Oasis reunion next year?
Oh dear, if only I had the courage to contact him. Can you imagine how many begging letters he's getting?
Yeah,
can you imagine how many begging letters he's got? That was as a result of, as people say sometimes, it's not big and it's not clever, but that was as a result of a drinking game in the post-tournament party at the end of the 2006 World Cup. And Noel very kindly did write a very nice piece about me in the, I think it was in The Guardian actually. But anyway, now, yeah, I haven't got the courage to ask, but boy, those tickets are gold dust, are they not?
Yeah, certainly are. Well, we've got a few listener questions that I mentioned. The first one coming from John Chili Rares. He says, what would your darting nickname be if you had one?
Well, I guess because Robert once had a dart shirt made for me for a bit of fun, and sort of, I guess very, very boringly, it just had Stubbsy on the back. Which is sort of a nickname that's sort of followed me around. So I guess it would be Stubbsy. I've been trying to find the shirt recently. I can't find it. Maybe that's just as well because it wouldn't fit, and that would be even more depressing. But I do have a Stubbsy dart shirt somewhere.
And the last one, we spoke about him at the top of the interview, Richie House, and he says, what is your go-to karaoke song? He knows this, you know. He knows this. He knows this because, and it's Painter's fault. I try to adopt professional standards as often as I can, but the night before the Champion of Champions this year, Kevin Painter persuaded me to go for a drink on the Friday night before the tournament started on the Saturday, and Richie was in there, and I was persuaded eventually to perform Rocks by Primal Screen, but Howson knows that, and he's taken the mickey out of me. Well, Ray, it's an absolute pleasure to get you on the show. We appreciate you giving us some of your time and wish you all the best with the World Seniors next week and what else is to come in 2024 as well.
Well, you know what? I was looking down the draw before when you was going to talk to you, and it seems to me that sort of on paper on the Friday, match after match after match just absolutely jumps out. And Phil Taylor about to bring the curtain down on his career, and he is playing the Seniors World Champion, no less. But every match could be an absolute cracker. And if anyone's going to York to the Barbican, please come and say hello to Robert and myself. It'd be nice to catch up. And thank you for asking me to appear on this.
Thanks again to Ray for joining us now, continuing the show, and we're going to be looking ahead now. We have got 3 Players' Championships coming up in Wigan this week from Tuesday through to Thursday. For the PDC players, it is the last chance to get some match practice in ahead of the World Grand Prix next week. So looking at the 32 players that are going to be heading to Leicester next week, who is most in need of a good run in Wigan?
Oh, there's quite a few. And starting on current form, there are 2 players that jump out, and that's Joe Cullen and Luke Woodhouse, to a lesser extent Brendan Dolan, because those are the players, not just were they the last 3 to get in terms of the Pro Tour Order of Merit, but they were also the 3 that backed themselves into the field. If you go back not that long ago, James Wade was in that last spot and had work to do, but he added 20,000 pounds there or thereabouts over the last month onto his Pro Tour Order of Merit to shoot up. Cameron Menzies also went flying up the rankings near the end. Mike DeDecker won an event and he kept his foot on the pedal, and that's why those guys all leapfrogged Cullen, Dolan, and Woodhouse. Woodhouse, he had a couple matches where he was going to go out. If Gabriel Clemens had managed to win one more match in the last Players' Championship event, well, then Woodhouse would have had to win his first round match. Gilding, if he'd beaten Rob Cross, that would have been enough. Callan Ritz needed to get a couple more wins on Sunday evening to do it, but he put himself in that position to get there. Luke Woodhouse stumbled over the line, but Brendan Dolan and Joe Cullen did as well. But there's another reason, especially for Cullen and Woodhouse, that they need a good run, and that's because their position in Minehead is anything but safe. They're currently in the field for the Players' Championship finals, but not by much. The cutoff right now is 18,000 pounds, with one person, Jeffrey DeGraff, currently outside of it. How Jeffrey DeGraff is outside of it is beyond me, with how good he was playing earlier this year, but he is outside it. Joe Cullen's only 2,000 pounds ahead of that. He's going to need to keep his foot on the gas, or rather, he needs to get his foot on the gas if he's going to make sure he gets to the Players' Championship final. But Luke Woodhouse is only slightly ahead of that on 21,500. Both of them have anything but safe spots. But for the same reason, I'm going to name 3 other players who might not need to have a big weekend as far as giving themselves confidence and finding match form for the World Grand Prix, but because they're currently outside the Players' Championship final spots. Nathan Aspinall, who looked fairly good this past weekend, as he continues to rebound from injuries and has missed a lot over the last couple months. Well, he's right now the second player out of the Players' Championship finals. A good trio of events could really rocket him up and get him back in the position to qualify. But Rob Cross as well is currently 3,000 pounds out, and Ricardo Pietreczko is significantly far back. We've talked about how poor he was for most of the first half of this year, both on the Euro Tour and in the Players' Championship events. He righted the ship with a brilliant run to the final in the Euro Tour a few weeks ago, but he has a lot of work to do to get to Minehead. So those are the names that jump out because they have stuff to do. But I'll mention just one more person, and that's Dimitri Van den Berg. He's been really inconsistent this year, and yes, it's early, but he has work to do even to get to the World Matchplay next year. Dimitri Van den Berg, he's a big stage player. He plays his best on television, but he needs to make sure he gets there. And right now, I don't know where his mind is. I don't know where his confidence is. And if I'm him, I'm going to want to have a big week to get some matches in and to get some confidence ahead of a very big tournament in Leicester.
Yeah, I've got to say, I think you've been reading my notes here because I have got a similar list of players to you. And I was also looking further ahead. Obviously, all eyes are going to be on Leicester next week for the World Grand Prix. It is one of the biggest tournaments on the calendar, but we have just had the race to that event finish yesterday when we're recording. The cut-off has come now, but we have still got plenty more of events to play for, plenty more races to follow. And as you mentioned, the Players' Championship finals, that is a big one, and 3 Players' Championships this week is almost half of the Players' Championships that we've got left for this year. So it's an important 3 days coming up for players, and there is a few names on my list, some of them that you had on there as well, and one you didn't know is Rob Cross, and he's one of them that's not in the Players' Championship finals as things stand. And we look at Rob Cross and we think, he's had a pretty good year. He had a decent Premier League without getting the results maybe that he wanted, but he also had a decent World Series this year as well, winning events there as well. But in terms of the Players' Championship finals, yes, we know he skipped almost half the Players' Championships so far this year. I think 10 of the 23 he's not played in so far, but in the 13 he has played in, yet to make a quarter-final. So if he wants to keep managing his schedule, skip events, which we know that the top players like to do, and they've probably got to do nowadays with all the events that we have. But I think a good showing in Wigan this week, 3 days of events, if he can get some good runs together, confirm his spot in Minehead, then that's going to give him a bit of wriggle room to maybe skip those last 2 Players' Championship double headers coming up and not have to go to those last 2 to confirm his spot for Minehead. And Nathan Aspinall, someone you mentioned, again, someone that isn't in the Players' Championship finals as things stand. And on the flip side for him, he's not had his schedule has been dominated by the fact that he has had that injury. So he's missed quite a few events, especially over the summer since the World Matchplay, but he's back and we are seeing him come back into some form. He had a couple of good wins at the weekend on the Euro Tour. He knocked out Dave Chisnall on Saturday. He also beat the Swiss Stompe Marcel Wolpen in the first round as well, but not in Minehead. So he needs a few good results this week to push him into those spots. And 2 other names I'll quickly throw out there. You did mention both of them as well, but they both had first round exits on the Euro Tour on Friday, and they've not had a good time of it recently. Dimitri Van den Berg and Joe Cullen, and you mentioned it as well, especially with Dimitri, a player that loves playing on the big stage. I'd probably put Joe Cullen in that mix as well, but Dimitri, he has won a title on the floor. Joe Cullen, he has had a final in the last few months, but aside from that, you look at Sexy September, it's not been a sexy September for either of them. So a few results this week, yeah, I think it would be welcome for both of them to take into Leicester at the World Grand Prix next week.
One more question for this week. We'll have our full World Grand Prix preview on the next show. But looking back at the event's history, can you give us your top 3 memorable matches from the World Grand Prix?
Oh, well, I've kind of given mine away on the Darts Corner website. I'll give a plug to that. I've put together a top 10 of my most memorable matches in World Grand Prix history in the lead up to the Grand Prix being on next week. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to go and check it out. But there's been some iconic moments, matches in the World Grand Prix. I think straight away of the 9 darters, the first double start from Brendan Dolan in 2011, and then James Wade and Robert Thornton both hitting one against each other a few years later. But for my top 3, I'm looking away from the 9 darters, and I've got 2 finals in there. At number 3, I'm going with Robert Thornton against Michael van Gerwen from 2015. Robert Thornton, he was a major champion back then, but he was a big underdog against van Gerwen, but stood toe-to-toe with the world number 1 at the time, pipped him in a last set decider to win the title. At number 2, I'm going to go with another final, this time 2012, and what was the major winning breakthrough in the PDC for Michael van Gerwen when he beat Mervyn King 6-4. MVG 4-1 down in sets. Looked like the King would finally be crowned a major winner in the PDC, but van Gerwen came back 5 sets in a row to win, and the rest, as they say, is history. But at my number 1, and it's a match I'd recommend any darts fan, if you're new to the game, go and watch it if you can find it on YouTube. I think YouTube is pretty good for darts matches around this time, and it is the 2010 semi-final between Phil Taylor and Adrian Lewis. A lot of darts around this time. I was watching at my grandparents', so I've got a vague memory of being around there watching this one. And at the time, Adrian Lewis had never beaten Phil Taylor on TV, and it was a real coming-of-age performance from Jackpot to beat Phil Taylor in a thriller of a game. It went all the way to a last set and a last leg. There's no tie breaks in the Grand Prix. Once it goes 2-2 in that last set, it is one leg to determine the winner, and Adrian Lewis got off to a hot start in that last leg and won it, got that first win over Phil. And okay, the next day didn't win the Grand Prix, lost it to James Wade, but just a few months later he was being crowned a world champion. And for me, I think this match is a key moment in Adrian Lewis's career, and it's such an exciting game to go and watch. So if you can go and find it, go and give it a watch before the Grand Prix.
Well, what I wanted to do on this one is to limit it to matches that I've seen since I started watching darts. And while the 2012 final was after I started watching darts, it wasn't actually after I started watching everything. I had watched the 2012 World Championships, and then I didn't watch again until the 2013 World Championships. So while I've seen MVG's blitz of a comeback against Mervyn King to eventually win that match 6-4, I think I've watched that match twice, in fact, over the last 12 years. I didn't watch it at the time, so I'm not going to count it. I want to go with 3 matches that I've seen. And there are a trio of matches from 3 consecutive years that stand out to me. And I'm going to go in reverse order, because I think in reverse order is the right way to handle it. The first one was a first-round match in 2017, and an upset at that, where John Henderson, despite playing, poorly doesn't begin to describe it. He had the second lowest average of anyone in the first round that week. But somehow, the second lowest average was still good enough to get past the best player in the world, Michael van Gerwen, 2-1. And he parlayed that into a trip to the semifinals with wins over Alan Norris and Raymond van Barneveld before going out to the eventual winner. But the reason I'm saying that one was because at the time it was the highlight of his career. And for Hendo, I think it gave him the confidence that he could accomplish more than that in the game. That was right after that he broke into the seeds on the Euro Tour for the first and only time. He didn't last in it for long, but he did get to be seeded for 4 events. And he had a consistency on the Pro Tour and a consistency that we hadn't on the big stage that we hadn't seen from him before, culminating in 2 Premier League appearances as a challenger and obviously winning the World Cup in 2021 for Scotland. But it was a monumental moment, and one that even now just seems so bizarre that he somehow won that match when he was clearly the second best player in it, but he found a way to do it. And that's why that one meets the prompt. It was memorable. But going back the previous year, the final between Michael van Gerwen and Gary Anderson, sure, it was 5-2, but it was one of the highest quality finals that we've ever seen from both players. And in the end, for Michael van Gerwen to become only the second person ever to average 100 in the final of the World Grand Prix, completing a tournament average of 99.46, breaking Phil Taylor's record for the highest tournament average, just under a ton for the tournament. It was a culmination of MVG at his best. And MVG at his best, well, apparently it's better even than Phil Taylor. But that's a final that Gary Anderson would have beaten anyone else and maybe even beaten them to nil. But he was lucky to get to 2 sets, although he could have got a couple more. But he was lucky to get to 2 sets the way MVG was playing. And then finally, one of the best matches I've ever seen, the 2015 final where Robert Thornton beat Michael van Gerwen 5-4. MVG missed a host of doubles in that match, missed a bunch in the final set as well. But Robert Thornton never looked like he didn't believe he would get it done, never bowed to pressure, and didn't even seem surprised when he beat the best player in the world in the final, in one of the greatest finals ever, in one of the tightest finals ever, in one of the best matches I've ever seen anywhere. And I would say the best match I've ever seen in the World Grand Prix. So that's my number one. All 3 involved MVG. He went down in 2 of them, but he won 1 of them. Anything else for this week?
Some great picks there, and get in touch with us. Let us know your favourite World Grand Prix matches ahead of the tournament next week. But just a few thank yous as always. Firstly, to our guests for joining us, to Cor and Ray for their time. Thank you to our sponsors, to Darts Corner, Quiff and Condor Darts. Links in the description. Do go and check them out. It's not just a busy time for darts on TV, but you're going to see a lot of the manufacturers putting out launches around this time. So head on over to Darts Corner for all your darts equipment. And finally, thank you to everyone for listening. We'll be back fairly soon with a preview for the World Grand Prix. The draw has been released just before we started recording, so we're going to delve into that on the next show. We'll give you a prediction or 2, but before then, you're going to have to hang tight. In the meantime, go and enjoy the darts.
Ooh, I hadn't even noticed that the draw had come out, so now I have something to look at once we hang up. So you know what? I'm not even going to say anything. I want to look at the draw, so we'll talk to you guys all next week. Hang tight to find out what I have to say about it.